A cold wind blows across Center Avenue in the town of New Raymer, one of a string of small rural towns which dot Colorado's eastern plains.
The train ran from Sterling to Cheyenne and back, and all of these little communities along here were whistle stops.
The Burlington and Missouri Railroad laid tracks through eastern Colorado in 1887. Along the way, they built depots to service the trains and foster growth.
Communities formed around them, towns, services, schools.
Raymer, as it was first called, was named for George Raymer, a civil engineer who helped build the line.
Without these little towns every 8 or 10 miles along the way, the whole area would never have been settled.
A new crop of homesteaders came in the 1910s, and with a name change to New Raymer, the community began to thrive. 100 years later, it's clear those glory days have faded. The buildings seem to melt back into the ground.
Yeah, that's a pretty good step.
But these walls can talk and still have a story to tell.
Post office was back there. I remember the window above the door, and the shelves were here and the counter.
Patty Ford grew up on a farm just south of town. She'd come into this grocery store every day after school.
The school buses with the school up north, they would stop here and allow the children to go in and get the mail. It was a hopping town. At first, I remember as a little girl, everybody used to come to town on a Saturday night, and the people that lived a long ways away would get their mail, and they would get their groceries, and we would socialize.
I was like second generation from the Homesteaders.
For Lee Fritz, the corner gas station was where it's at.
The kids our age and stuff, or my age at that time and stuff, it was kind of a place where we'd meet and talk to some other friends and stuff, and just socialize, played a lot of cards in that station.
Yeah, I grew up here. It was a tavern from 48 to 58, a gathering place for everyone. And Mom is actually pregnant, expecting me. This is a place they could shoot pool, have a beer, and a hamburger. That's about all they served.
Trina Kauk's family owned that tavern and lived in the back. Shortly after Trina was born, her father became the town's postmaster. He closed the tavern and converted it into the post office.
It was a post office. A lot of the guys would gather out front and gather to talk every morning about whatever was new. So it's kind of the central point of the town.
That changed in the 1950s and 1960s.
Well, I graduated in 1966, so at that point we had pretty much lost a lot of the stores and businesses in town. I think people just became more mobile, and if they had shopping to do, they would go to a bigger city. That if stuff wasn't offered here, they would travel to a bigger city, so they did everything there.
Since then, these buildings have sat along Center Avenue, used for little more than storage.
The ones that are surviving, I think it's a real surprise to most of us that they are. But this is great because I think they need to be preserved.
This is one of the few towns left on that railway line between Sterling and Cheyenne that is still standing, that still has an identity.
And now residents want to preserve that identity for future generations.
A lot of people migrate back to this area, and there's a reason why they do, and everybody that grew up here knows that reason, but it's hard to explain that reason.
And now Kyle has taken the first step in passing that along to the next generation. He purchased the tavern-turned post office that Trina Kauk grew up in.
When I walked in, I went, wow, I think I could make something really neat out of this.
He's hoping to bring back a little of that weekend social scene that gave New Raymer life in its heyday.
They can come over on Fridays and Saturday nights after games, and they can hang out with their friends and play pool, and won't be a business because I owned a bar once and I'll never do that again.
Other residents hope to build on that passion.
I don't believe businesses will come back and thrive in Raymer anymore, but I do think that we can revitalize it in a new way to educate people who come here to visit and to learn and appreciate the prairies.